regular bus services to Belarus and Russia. According to Latvian Transport Minister Adis Švinks, the decision will be based on security considerations and will allow for reassessment if the situation changes. Švinks even noted that with this decision by the Cabinet of Ministers, regular passenger bus services to Russia and Belarus will be terminated and carriers' existing permits will be revoked or their renewal will be denied. In other words, the Baltic countries are not just closing a border crossing. Led by Lithuania, the Baltic Group is effectively shelving Belarus and Russia's last logistical artery to Europe, and the route to Kaliningrad with a single signature. The latest decision from Vilnius is seen not as a diplomatic warning note, but as a comprehensive logistical blockade. Following the decision to dismantle the railways, the historic suspension of bus services could now leave Minsk and Moscow facing the cold reality of complete isolation. This is because dozens of buses could fall silent daily on the route stretching from Medininkai to Shalchininkai. And this silence could mean, in a broader perspective, the closure of a road route stretching from Kaliningrad to Belarus and from there to Russia. In other words, thousands of passengers could be stranded on the other side of the border, behind a newly erected wall. Therefore, this is not a simple transportation restriction. The decision to suspend bus services is the harshest, most destructive, and irreversible response to the balloon attacks invading Lithuanian skies, the thousands of trucks held hostage at the border, and the hybrid war orchestrated by the Kremlin. So, what exactly does this major closure mean on the ground, on the asphalt, and at the terminals? When we set aside the headlines and look at the numbers, the logistics data from the field, and the intelligence reports, the gravity of the situation becomes starkly clear. The plan on the Lithuanian Ministry of Transport's desk was designed to drive the existing travel network into collapse. And this plan is now working like clockwork. Currently, there are 29 active bus routes connecting Lithuania and Belarus via the Medininkai and Shalchininkai border crossings. These routes were the lifeline for thousands of people, from diplomats to students, workers to families. However, the Vilnius administration is halting this traffic with a scalpel-like precision under the declared state of emergency. The new order under the state of emergency is clear and uncompromising. Only one bus will be allowed to operate in each direction on each route. This is seen as a de facto ban and a logistical strangulation operation. Now, let's delve into the data. Before the crisis, 44 buses crossed daily at the Medininkai border crossing, the most critical crossing point. This meant a continuous flow of 22 trips in both directions. Now, this number will likely drop dramatically. Those busy terminals will probably become empty concrete structures where only the wind whistles. A similar logistical disaster is unfolding on the Shalchininkai route. This network, which handled 18 buses a day, or 9 departures and 9 arrivals, could be brought to a near standstill. The Lithuanian Transport Safety Authority, LTSA, has now ended its warning period. It is alleged that buses that exceed the permit limit, perhaps hoping to get through, are being turned back at the Shalchininkai border crossing. Carriers' existing permits are being revoked, and renewal applications are being rejected outright. So why is Vilnius, with the backing of its Baltic allies, cutting off its own tourism and trade arteries at the expense of its own economy? Because Belarus has turned the borders these buses cross and the airspace above them into the strangest but most effective hybrid war ramp modern warfare has ever seen. Lithuanian skies have been under what amounts to a silent invasion organized by Minsk in recent months. The soldiers of this invasion are not people, they are weather balloons. It may sound simple. However, these balloons can be used as cheap, hard-to-detect asymmetric weapons capable of crippling civil aviation. According to shocking data published by the Ministry of the Interior, a total of 599 illegal balloons and 197 drones have infiltrated Lithuanian airspace this year alone. These are not innocent weather balloons. They are guided threats used for cigarette smuggling, testing radar systems, and plunging Vilnius airport into chaos. The negative impact of all this on Lithuania has been nothing short of airspace paralysis. This balloon attack strategy has repeatedly halted flights at Vilnius airport. Planes were forced to circle in the air. Flight routes were diverted to Kaunas. According to reports, these attacks disrupted 320 flights and affected a total of 47,000 passengers. In the latest incident alone, on the evening of December 6th, 1,000 passengers were stranded in airport terminals, caught in the middle of uncertainty because of these stray mines in the sky. This was the last straw for the Lithuanian government. Vilnius launched a disproportionate but strategic retaliation, saying, "If you terrorize our airspace with balloons, we will completely close your roads." The third and perhaps dirtiest dimension of the crisis, as you may recall, involved hostage trucks. The tension between Belarus and Lithuania was not confined to the skies, but also played out on the highways. The Minsk administration, responding with fierce anger to Lithuania's increased border security, orchestrated one of the largest commercial hostage-taking operations in modern history. Belarusian customs arbitrarily banned Lithuanian-registered heavy vehicles from leaving the country. This was not a technical malfunction or bureaucratic delay, but a deliberate obstruction. The data from the Lithuanian National Transporters Association Linava was chilling. According to Linava, approximately 1,250 Lithuanian trucks and a total of nearly 4,000 vehicles are currently being held captive in Belarus, behind barbed wire. The gravity of the situation does not end there. Instead of releasing these vehicles, the regime in Minsk is threatening to seize the vehicles parked in parking lots, intimidating companies. Drivers cannot return home, millions of dollars worth of goods are rotting, and the trucks are being used as bargaining chips. The Vilnius government has urgently called on the European Commission to rescue its citizens and vehicles, while speaking the only language Lukashenko understands on the ground. "If you hold our trucks, we will collapse your bus network and cut your country off from the world." These statements are probably the clearest indication of Vilnius's future direction. On the other hand, Lithuania's decision to suspend bus services cannot be seen as a unilateral, impulsive step. It may be just the final link in a much larger, much more systematic, and geopolitically much more destructive plan, the Baltic states' logistics strategy. Because Vilnius is not just stopping passenger traffic, it is also dismantling the physical infrastructure, the steel backbone connecting countries, the railways. The symbolism and strategic destruction here are immense. As you know, during the Cold War, the Iron Curtain was an abstract concept. This abstract concept was almost a political border. Today, however, the Baltic countries, namely Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and Poland, are physically removing the railroad tracks leading to Russia and Belarus from the ground. The removal of the tracks is a much more permanent damage than the cancellation of bus services. A bus service can be reinstated by decree. However, it takes years to restore a railway line that has been dismantled, broken up, and covered with anti-tank obstacles, dragon's teeth. The Baltic heads of state see this decision as a common defense doctrine. Estonian President Alar Karis and Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda described the removal of these tracks as a counter-mobility measure that will slow down the enemy's logistics in the event of a possible Russian invasion. This strategy effectively nullifies Belarus's geographical advantage, namely its status as a transit country between East and West. As Latvian Transport Minister Adis Švinka admits, dismantling these tracks could mean economic suicide, particularly as it would completely halt transit trade for goods coming from Asia and China. However, the Baltic countries have prioritized their security over their economies. Blocking the logistics network in this way, by stopping both buses on the roads and trains on the railways, creates suffocating pressure on the Lukashenko regime. Lithuanian Interior Minister Kondratovič sums up the purpose of this move with this cold question. Kondratovič said, "How will this affect the Belarusian regime? Will it be painful?" The answer is definitely and indisputably yes, because this blockade targets not only the regime, but also the informal economy and smuggling routes that allow the regime to breathe. Lukashenko may find himself with virtually no options in terms of logistics within his own borders, his room for maneuver reduced to zero. However, the darkest, most dangerous, and most strategic part of this story does not end at the Belarusian border. The real target is Russia's nuclear-armed forward outpost in the heart of Europe, which remains in the shadow of this blockade. As we mentioned in the introduction to the video, We are referring to the Kaliningrad exclave, which could be most affected by this logistical disruption. Lithuania's severing of its land and rail connections with Belarus is not a simple bilateral crisis. It is seen as a geopolitical constraint decision that shakes Kaliningrad. This is because the logistics corridor stretching from Russia's mainland to Kaliningrad inevitably passes through Belarus and Lithuania. If Lithuania completely closes its border with Belarus to buses, trains, and trucks, Kaliningrad could become defenseless and logistically isolated, like an island in the middle of the Baltic Sea, surrounded by NATO countries. The current trajectory appears to be leading to complete isolation for Kaliningrad. This could be a strategic nightmare for Putin. While the Kremlin has been threatening NATO via the Suwalki corridor for years, it is now watching its own corridor being choked off and its own supply lines cut. The Baltic countries Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland are acting in unison and as one body as never before in history. This is diplomatic chess at its highest level. Lithuania, working in coordination with the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is not making decisions alone. This is defined as a bloc decision and an alliance encirclement. Latvia's similar preparations to ban bus services to Belarus prove that the region is building a steel Baltic wall against Russia and Belarus. With Western sanctions also entering this equation, Putin and Lukashenko appear to be in a very difficult position. Lithuanian Foreign Minister Gabrielius Landsbergis and the Minister of Transport are pulling Brussels into this battle by demanding tougher sanctions against Belarus and a consistent action plan from the European Commission. Their demands are clear: save the trucks, increase sanctions, legitimize the blockade. If the EU approves Lithuania's request and completely closes the Belarusian border as an EU external border, Russia's western trade routes could be crippled. This strategic encirclement could fundamentally undermine Putin's hybrid warfare doctrine. Russia and Belarus thought they could divide and wear down Europe by using migrants, balloons, and truck blackmail. But as we have seen, the result has been the opposite. These provocations, rather than intimidating the Baltic states, have united them with an iron will. Russia and Belarus no longer face a fragmented, divided Europe. From today onwards, the spirit of Europe has transformed into a bloc that is dismantling Russia and Belarus's railways, sealing their borders with concrete blocks, and responding to the seizure of their trucks with the harshest possible measures, namely total isolation. With the formation of this bloc, the security of Kaliningrad no longer seems to be guaranteed by Moscow. This special exclave may have entered the initiative of Vilnius, Riga, and Warsaw in terms of its logistics network with Lithuania's decision to halt bus routes. Meanwhile, Lithuania's decision to halt bus services, dismantle railways, and cut truck traffic is not a simple transportation decision. This marks the official end of an era, the era of being a bridge to the east. The advantages of the gray zone games, the era of exploiting uncertainty, have run out for Lukashenko's Belarus and Putin's Russia. The hybrid war games they initiated, the balloon attacks, and the attempts to seize trucks have only become catalysts accelerating their own isolation. The Baltic countries are now cutting iron with iron. They are responding to those who seize trucks by completely closing the border, to those who fly balloons by locking down their airspace and roads. So the result is clear. Russia's western gate now appears to be sealed. The arteries of the logistics routes extending to Kaliningrad, Belarus, and Russia, the highways used by buses, have been severed. Kaliningrad has been isolated within NATO waters, and the Lukashenko regime, behind the wall it built with its own hands, has been left completely cut off from Europe, facing economic and social collapse. In short, the game Putin and Lukashenko have been trying to play against the West is undergoing a major shakeup. The doors are closed, and the key has been thrown into the dark waters of the Baltic Sea. So what are your thoughts on this? Can the Baltic countries completely neutralize Russia and Belarus over time by halting their logistics networks and bus routes and by dismantling their train tracks as they did before? Or do the Baltics need much more forceful and effective moves against Russia and Belarus? We look forward to your comments and sincere likes. Thank you for watching.
Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Peace.